She remembers the flicker of fluorescent lights above her cubicle, the hum of vending machines in the break room, and the quiet hours between 11 p.m. and dawn when the office finally stopped pretending it was collaborative. That's when she did her real work. Alone, unsupervised, uncredited. Lines of Python code stitched together between sips of vending machine coffee. Bash scripts nested inside cron jobs like matryoshka dolls. Sleepless weeks folded into command line poetry. Her teammates were busy flaunting Canvas slides or arguing over whose gut feeling mattered more. She was busy untangling the company's processes. One brittle spreadsheet, one broken API call, one forgotten integration at a time. She didn't fix things because she was asked. She fixed them because no one else even saw the problems. Because watching the same disaster happen every Monday made her feel like she was part of the chaos, and she hated that more than the overtime. The first time her automation script handled an entire invoicing cycle without human error, she didn't tell anyone. She just watched as the reports balanced perfectly. Her boss thought it was luck. She smiled, let them think so, and slowly it spread. Procurement queues emptied overnight. Expense reports filed themselves. The angry, who forgot to follow up? Slack threads stopped appearing. Deadlines came and went without emergency meetings. Eventually, people started clocking out early, bragging about team synergy and our smooth pipeline. She'd built a machine elegant, tireless, and invisible. She should have felt proud. Instead, she felt hollow. They didn't ask how it worked. They didn't even ask if it was her. They just assumed everything had finally started behaving like it should. She walked past whiteboards filled with fake strategy and listened to managers saying things like, "We've hit operational maturity," while referring to her scripts as the back-end elves. Not a name, not a thank you, just a condescending pat on the head and a joke about how she was our quiet little wizard. But she kept smiling, because it was almost funny how fragile it all was. How every system they depended on, every metric they printed in reports was sitting on code she hadn't documented. Processes no one else had touched. Integrations that only worked because she personally massaged their quirks. And that's when she knew. They thought they owned the machine. But the machine still spoke her language. She never said it aloud. But her silence had teeth. And deep down, in the quietest part of herself, she whispered, "You'll miss me the second I stop running updates." The scripts ran clean. The dashboards lit green. The chaos was tamed. But recognition, it never came. Just quiet anticipation, and the growing suspicion that when things work too well, people stop wondering why. Or WHOIT was a Thursday morning when they summoned her. No warning. Just a calendar invite titled, "Realignment Discussion, 10 a.m., mandatory." No agenda, no explanation, just corporate vagueness wrapped in a weapon. She showed up in her usual way, quiet, early, unnoticed. The conference room smelled like synthetic citrus and betrayal. Her manager was already seated, joined by a brittle-smiling HR rep who introduced herself as here to facilitate a smooth transition. Across the table, someone had left a box of branded tissues. She almost laughed. The manager cleared his throat. "First of all, I just want to acknowledge the incredible work you've done here. Thanks to your efforts, the entire department runs like a dream. Truly seamless." She blinked. "Okay. And that's the thing," he continued, folding his hands like a preacher about to deliver bad news with a grin. "You've made yourself redundant. The automation's taken care of everything. There's really no more hands-on work required. Which, from a business standpoint, is a testament to your brilliance." She stared. Was that supposed to be a compliment? The HR woman slid a folder toward her, full of legal politeness. "We're offering a generous severance package," she chirped. 2 months' pay, plus resume support. That word, generous, hit her like glass in the mouth. Outside the glass walls of the room, she could see her coworkers hunched over desks she'd effectively emptied of labor. One of them glanced up, smirked, and quickly looked away. Another sipped coffee from a mug she bought him last Christmas. No one met her eyes. "So," her manager added with a faux paternal nod, "take some time, breathe. This isn't personal. It's just optimization. She felt her heartbeat in her ears, but her face didn't move. She let the silence stretch like taut wire. Right? She said finally, her voice low and pleasant. Makes perfect sense. The sarcasm was invisible to them. They mistook it for compliance. They thought she'd be grateful, that she'd bow out gracefully, smile like the good little ghost they'd always treated her as. Her mind flickered back to every undocumented shortcut, every brittle integration hidden beneath a friendly user interface. She remembered the webhook that required a monthly token refresh, the patch she hadn't pushed to production yet, the monitoring alert she'd muted because it triggered falsely, and would again. She didn't need to destroy anything. She just had to stop babysitting it. Can I ask? She said casually, tapping the severance folder. Who'll be maintaining the system? Oh, her manager laughed, as if she were asking how clouds worked. It's self-sustaining now. That's the beauty of automation, right? She smiled. Full teeth. Right? She took the folder. Didn't bother reading it. When she stepped out, the hallway felt colder. One of the interns gave her a quick thumbs up, like she'd just finished a good exit interview. She walked past the project board where her code name still hung, post-it notes curling at the edges like the truth trying to peel through the fiction. Nobody clapped. Nobody cared. But that was fine, because while they were busy cutting the ribbon on a future they didn't understand, she was already pulling the scaffolding from beneath their feet, just by walking away. Her face showed nothing, but inside, her sarcasm sizzled like static. They'd called her obsolete. She'd let them prove it. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't go around saying goodbye with cupcakes and fake hugs like the others did when they were offloaded. She went back to her desk, sat down, logged in one last time, and quietly began to vanish. No announcement, no Slack status change, just a few subtle clicks, intentional, methodical, deliberate. The master API key, revoked. The GitHub token, rotated. The background container running on her personal AWS sandbox, deleted. Her touch was invisible. Her absence wouldn't be. She didn't wipe anything. That would have been dramatic, traceable, petty. Instead, she simply unlinked her personal credentials from the systems no one else realized were propped up by her presence. The vendor dashboards that needed monthly token refreshes, gone silent. The automation cron jobs tied to her calendar, suddenly unscheduled. The Slack bot that handled expense approvals, still cheerful, still alive, until next Friday when its access token expired. Quietly, without fuss. It wasn't destruction. It was subtraction. She moved through the system like a ghost cleaner, removing fingerprints, unwinding dependencies that shouldn't have existed in the first place. The kind of work you only notice when it's not being done. By the time her last day ended, the illusion still held. The dashboards were still green. The pipelines still looked clean. The bosses were patting each other on the back, talking about maturity and next-gen operations. Meanwhile, her laptop sat powered off, her badge already turned in. She never looked back, but she knew exactly how long the silence would last. 3 days. That's how long it would take before the first glitch. The vendor email that never sent. Then the Monday report that failed to generate. Then the invoice backlog quietly stacking up in the back-end queue, never triggering the approval script. By Tuesday, someone would notice the refund processor wasn't running. By Thursday, finance would panic, wondering why payroll exceptions hadn't been flagged. By Friday, someone would try logging into the notification dashboard, only to find that two-factor authentication was tied to her phone. And her number? Disconnected. She didn't write a goodbye post, didn't tweet about corporate injustice or post a tearful LinkedIn essay. She just left a breadcrumb. A README file buried 6 folders deep in the automation directory. One line. No flair. System requires human maintenance every 28 days. Or it forgets how to breathe. No one would see it in time. Her emotional state as she closed her personal laptop that night? Not rage. Not revenge. Just calm. Clean, surgical detachment. Because she hadn't burned anything. She'd simply stopped being the one holding it together. And the machine, so proud of its self-sufficiency, was about to learn what silence really sounded like. The first crack came before lunch. A QA analyst posted in the team Slack, "Hey, is the invoice validator down? I submitted the same ticket 3 times, no response." It was ignored. Then a client emailed support directly, politely at first. "Just checking. Wasn't our monthly deliverable due this morning? Haven't received anything from the dashboard yet." Still nothing. Just a few lazy emojis and a "we'll check on that after stand-up." She was gone. But her absence had started humming through the walls like carbon monoxide. By mid-afternoon, the front-end team was shouting into a channel called #emergencydev. The pipeline was failing. Test environments weren't provisioning. The Slack bot for client reporting hadn't posted since 9:04 a.m. That's when someone finally noticed. Half the automations were pending retry, and the other half weren't running at all. Meanwhile, she sat on her porch with a cup of black coffee, watching the autumn sun paint slow lines across her fence. She wasn't smiling. Not yet. But her heart had stopped racing for the first time in days. Her inbox, still connected to a few shared folders out of pure neglect, was filling with increasingly panicked CCs. Can anyone reach out to her name? Real quick? Does anyone know how the delivery bot is triggered manually? This used to just work automatically. Who maintained it? By 4:15 p.m., a meeting invite titled "Urgent. Delivery bot failing" appeared. She wasn't invited. But someone accidentally hit "Reply All" and typed, "Did she ever document this stuff? Who has access now?" She almost laughed. Her manager finally dropped a message in the general channel. "Hey team, just a minor hiccup in automation. Should be sorted shortly. Appreciate everyone's patience." She could smell the flop sweat through the screen. Minor hiccup? They hadn't received a single payable invoice since 9 a.m. For client dashboards were now stuck on last week's data. And the auto-reconciler? It was silently throwing errors that no one noticed. Yet, she reclined in her chair and stared at the clouds, feeling the weight of humiliation dissolve into something sharper, colder, control. They'd kicked her out like a janitor who'd mopped herself into irrelevance. But now the floors were flooding. She didn't lift a finger, didn't answer a single message. She just watched it unfold, like an engineer observing a bridge they knew would collapse, but no one else bothered to inspect. And then, exactly 5:06 p.m., her old boss pinged her on LinkedIn. "Hey, quick one. Sorry to bother you. Any chance you could hop on a quick call and walk us through the alert handler? We think it's just a minor setting issue." She stared at the message, didn't reply, just turned off notifications. They didn't know yet, not fully, but soon they'd realize she wasn't just the builder. She was the safety net. And now, the fall had begun. Her phone began buzzing before sunrise. She didn't flinch. She let it hum across the countertop like a trapped insect. Missed call, voicemail, Slack ping, another email, then another. Each notification stacked like a prayer tossed into the void. She padded barefoot into her kitchen, poured coffee into a chipped mug, and stood quietly as the machine buzzed again. This time, urgent, please respond. Subject line in all caps. No salutation, just desperation. She didn't open it, didn't even blink. The silence in her apartment was thick, padded, deliberate. The kind of silence that once felt lonely until now. Now it sounded like applause that finally made sense. Because while they were busy flailing, she was free. Not innocent, not untouched, but unreachable. She sat down on her couch, pulled a throw blanket over her knees, and opened her inbox. Not to read, but to watch the flood rise. Just a quick question about the webhook logs. Any chance you remember the error threshold for the auto-invoice failover? We're getting weird client data mismatches. Not urgent, just if you happen to see this. Please, I'm sorry, just help me fix this. Her former coworkers were collapsing inward, each message more frantic, more contradictory than the last. Her boss tried texting, this time with what he must have thought was charm. "Haha, okay, this is getting silly. Let's jump on Zoom and fix this fast. No hard feelings. No hard feelings. She let out a sharp laugh into her coffee mug, startling her cat. He'd fired her because she'd made herself obsolete. Now his voice was in her voicemail, saying things like, "We really need your expertise to help stabilize things. Just a quick call." She didn't delete the voicemails. She archived them, labeled them, Exhibit A, arrogance melting into panic. And still, she said nothing. She flipped through the incoming client emails. Someone must have forgotten to revoke her access to the support inbox aliases. Please explain the delay. This affects contract compliance. Respond ASAP. Why is our portal down? Is your company going through restructuring? The last one made her pause. Restructuring. Funny how they only noticed the architecture once the building started shaking. She refreshed LinkedIn for sport. Her former company's profile still boasted 99.8% automation-driven performance. The irony burned slow. Then, buried beneath the pile of desperate messages, a short one from an investor. Just heard there were issues with your process engineer, that the systems aren't recoverable. Please confirm that's not true. Process engineer. They didn't even know her name. She closed her laptop, picked up her still buzzing phone and walked it over to the sink. Paused, then set it down gently, unbroken, and walked away. She didn't need to kill the noise. The noise meant they still thought she might answer. And the longer she stayed silent, the louder the proof became. She had never been redundant. She had been essential. And now they were learning the hard way what happens when you cut the power and expect the lights to stay on. The meeting invite arrived with all the fake decorum of a peace treaty written in blood. Subject: urgent. Leadership sync W/. Her name. Time: 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Location: Zoom. Attendees: CEO, CTO, legal counsel, HR business partner, process consultant. No subject line had ever screamed desperation so politely. She almost didn't accept. But curiosity got the better of her. She wore a sweatshirt, no makeup, hair in a loose bun, lit from one side by the slant of afternoon sun. They logged in one by one, faces tight, voices too rehearsed. The CEO smiled like a politician. The CTO looked like he hadn't slept in 2 days. The HR rep muttered something about just hoping for a constructive path forward. She muted herself and waited. The CEO spoke first, with the gravitas of someone who just learned that automation is not the same as immunity. "We appreciate you making the time. Obviously, we've had a few disruptions since your departure." Disruptions. She almost smiled. "And we believe that a collaborative path forward benefits all parties. We're prepared to offer a formal consultancy agreement, competitive rate, clean references, but we'd like to avoid escalation." She leaned forward slightly. Escalation. The CTO jumped in, trying to sound calm but cracking around the edges. To be frank, some investors are concerned. They've asked questions about sustainability, about system ownership. If this doesn't get resolved, you could find your reputation impacted. Word travels in this industry. There it was. The threat, wrapped in passive voice. You could find your reputation impacted. She unmuted, let the silence stretch. And then she said, with terrifying calm, "Didn't you tell me the system was self-sustaining? That my role was redundant?" The CEO cleared his throat. "That was based on a different understanding." She tilted her head. "So, you misunderstood the system you bragged about to shareholders." "Interesting." HR tried to interrupt. "Let's all stay professional." She cut in ice cold. "Professional? You mean like firing someone by email and then calling them a liability when your house of cards collapses?" They went quiet. She turned her gaze directly to the CEO. "You thought you could eat the meal, fire the chef, and keep the restaurant open. Turns out, the menu was written in my language. CTO, you're holding the company hostage." "No," she said, voice flat. "I just stopped saving you." They all blinked. And that's when it hit her. Not just the vindication, not just the grim pleasure of watching them flail, but the realization. They didn't even know what she controlled. They thought it was the scripts, the triggers, the integrations. But she didn't just build the system. She was the system. Her fingerprints were everywhere. From the data integrity checks embedded in vendor handoffs to the obscure logging pathways no one had ever bothered to explore. She was the pulse that made the whole thing seem alive. And now they were gasping without her. She leaned back, voice calm as glass. I won't be consulting. I won't be restoring anything. I won't be helping you. I won't be saving you from the consequences of thinking competence is disposable. Final beat. Blacklist me if you want. But remember, blacklists go both ways. And you're bleeding in shark water. Then she ended the call. Didn't wait for them to reply. Didn't log back in. Just sat in the silence, bitter and perfect. And for the first time, she felt it not as revenge, but as power. The next play was obvious. She'd predicted it days ago, knew they'd scramble for a bandage once they realized they'd cut out the heart. And right on cue, they announced it in a LinkedIn post dripping with forced optimism. Excited to welcome rival consultant's name as our new automation partner. Big things coming. She nearly choked on her tea. He was a known quantity, a flashy dev for hire with loud tweets and louder failures. The kind of guy who claimed to optimize pipelines and revolutionize legacy stacks, while copy-pasting Stack Overflow answers into production environments. Still, she watched, waited, and 3 days later, she got her reward. A live client call, supposed to be a triumphant re-onboarding demo, was leaked in pieces. First, a confused tweet from a beta user. Did the dashboard just say the system ate itself? Then a Reddit post. Automation dev melts down in real time. I don't know what this script does is not the flex you think it is. The clip was glorious in its own grotesque way. The consultant fumbled live, screen sharing dozens of broken dependencies and half-working endpoints. At one point, he actually said, "We think she left behind some untraceable elements, kind of like booby traps. Not malicious, just confusing." Someone from client-side asked coldly, "So you don't understand what's running on the servers we pay for?" The silence that followed was so pure she almost wished she'd been there to enjoy it in person. She watched it all unfold from her tiny apartment, barefoot, half laughing, half empty. There was no joy left, just confirmation. They were dying in the ruins of her architecture. And then, late that night, her inbox pinged. A name she recognized, one of the juniors. A quiet analyst. Always polite. Always overlooked. Subject: "Thank you. I know you probably won't respond, but I wanted to say this. We all saw how they treated you. We all knew who really built the system. They tried to erase you, but now they can't stop saying your name. So, thank you for proving what we already knew." She stared at the message longer than she meant to. No emojis, no requests, no desperation, just acknowledgement. And for a moment, just a flicker, her chest tightened. Not from guilt, but from the ghost of the version of herself who once believed that being brilliant would be enough. She closed the message and sat in the dark. Because here she was, the architect of collapse, the ghost in the wires, the whispered legend among panicked interns and clueless executives. Hero to some, villain to others, savior, executioner, myth, and yet, alone. The company, circling the drain. Investors weren't just asking questions, they were sending lawyers. Clients were demanding refunds and threatening to break contracts. 2 departments had already announced strategic restructuring, which everyone knew meant layoffs. She hadn't touched a single file, hadn't lifted a finger, and still it was all burning. She didn't need fire. They'd built the funeral pyre themselves. All she did was stop holding the match. It came through her personal email this time. Not the usual panicked flurry from middle managers, not the flailing interns or threadbare consultants. This was direct, from the CEO himself. Subject: "Let's talk. A new opportunity." She didn't open it at first. She let it sit, unread, rotting in digital sunlight. But curiosity, like an old injury, eventually flared. The message was short, measured, oversanitized. We've had time to reflect on the tremendous impact of your work. The current situation has made clear just how integral your contributions were. We'd like to make things right. Executive-level compensation, full autonomy, stock options, relocation allowance if desired. A new title, Director of Systems Architecture. No hard feelings, just a clean slate. Let's rebuild, together. There it was. Not an apology, not accountability, just capitalized perks and a desperate hand reaching through smoke. She reread the final line twice. Let's rebuild, together. As if they hadn't watched her bleed in silence. As if they hadn't thrown her out like expired software and expected the system to purr forever. As if her humiliation hadn't been deliberate, public, smirking, but still her hands hesitated above the keyboard. Because buried under the fury, the sarcasm, the cold triumph, was a flicker of temptation. It wasn't just the money. It was the validation, the implicit admission that they'd failed without her. That she was never redundant, just inconvenient, too smart, too necessary, too female to be given power without first stripping her name from the credit. What would it feel like to walk back in and take the corner office? To make them choke on every dismissal, every eye roll, every meeting where they called her quirky instead of brilliant, but the price was her silence, her complicity, her self-respect sold back to her at market rate. She stared at the draft reply, blank, the cursor blinking like a dare. Then she stood up, poured a drink, and let the thought dissolve. Because no, they didn't want her back. They wanted the system back. The oxygen, the safety net. They wanted the ghost of her labor to prop up their illusion again, until the next quarterly bonus made them bold enough to forget her again. She opened the reply box, typed 6 words. You were right. You don't need me. No greeting, no signature, no second line, just a scalpel. She hit send, and in the silence that followed, her pulse slowed, her laptop fan spun. Outside, a dog barked. Life continued, without chaos, without them. She wasn't a switch. She wasn't a service. She wasn't coming back. Let them drown. She didn't celebrate. There was no champagne, no Instagram post. No smug selfie with a hashtag winning caption. She simply closed her laptop, shut off the phone for good, and stepped out into a cold wind that didn't ask for explanations. There were no more offers, no more messages, no more meetings. The flood had receded, leaving behind silence and ash. She was officially jobless. No title, no benefits, no dental. And yet, for the first time in years, she could breathe without permission. Across town, the company was still spiraling. Interns walked out. Clients terminated contracts mid-cycle. 2 investors leaked emails about negligent leadership and irrecoverable system knowledge gaps. Rumors swirled on industry forums. Words like lawsuit and breach began appearing next to their name. She hadn't touched a single line of code in weeks. She'd simply walked away. And without her, the machine died gasping. She took a train to nowhere in particular. Let the scenery blur into nothing. Slept in cheap hotels. Woke up in towns that didn't know her name. It wasn't joy. Not exactly. It was something colder, sharper, like dragging yourself out of wreckage. Ribs cracked, blood drying on your lip, but alive. She was never going back. She could have accepted their apology that wasn't. Could have taken their obscene salary and worn their badge like armor. Could have let them pretend the past didn't happen. But that would have meant letting them win. And they had to know, had to feel it in their bones, that the thing they fired wasn't redundant. It was structural. She had been the code and the conscience, the duct tape and the damn blueprint. They didn't replace her. They couldn't. They just sat in meetings now, mouths dry, pretending they weren't bleeding out, while the system she built rusted in real time. She hadn't just walked out. She had taken the ghost with her. And when people say, "But you burned every bridge," she shrugs. Because bridges only matter if you plan to return. She never will. Final thought. Muted, unspoken, but glowing in the back of her mind like an ember that refuses to die. They wanted me invisible until the work vanished with me. Turns out, the ghost they fired was the only thing keeping them alive. No headlines, no redemption arc, just a quiet, smoking ruin behind her, and the unmistakable sound of her dignity rising.